Alright, so another movie has crossed into the $1 billion mark. That's right, I'm talking about Moana 2. And even though that this is the sequel to the first, and it is the follow-up, and even though I think it's a downgrade to the first, it's not as good. And even with the journey with Moana and her sidekick Maui as they jet off into another adventure, but even though with audiences really showed up to this movie and gave it a lot of love, but now it's really growing big as well. And so in this video, I'm gonna breaking down of how Moana 2 crossed $1 billion, and if Disney's comeback is here, and what could we expect from them in the future in terms of the good ideas and concepts, and even if their movies will turn out to be sequels that are big winners for the brand as well. And so if you're new, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so I'm on any future bits. But now let's get right into it. And now I'm gonna start this off by giving you guys my thoughts on Moana 2, and even if you caught my review the day that I reviewed it when it came out, and even though I think it's a bit of a downgrade from the first movie, it's solid, like it's not as good as the first, but like with every bits and elements that were adapted into the sequel, it felt like an episodic piece of television combined into a movie. And if you guys remember the announcement, but it felt like television, but like just like a sequel from Disney Animation, because I think it was a definite win, especially as people, little kids and generations of children love the first Moana because people love that character. It's become a household name for Disney animation, and with why it still resonates with the younger audiences, because even though that they love the first movie, and they really showed up to the sequel, and people love the character of Moana, and even when the sequel unfolded, and the fact that she has a sister, and that she went out to a whole new group of people for like another adventure. But just with the things it kind of irks me a little bit is that how things felt out of place into this sequel TV show. But it grows to a big $1 billion, and I hope, because that's what Disney was hoping for. Even though just with the star power, especially from The Rock, and just with everything that was combined into that film, which technically I was not a fan of. But even if you enjoyed it, I'm happy for you. Your opinions are your own. But I think it's a solid movie, and even with the ideas and concepts that they wanted to adapt in the sequel, which I did like, but not a lot. And on top of, with the music that was used, and it didn't really hit the same as the first, because even though those were by Lin-Manuel Miranda that won an Oscar for that movie, but even though he didn't return to do the music for the second movie, because it didn't match the originality that it sort of appealed to the audience. But I was okay with it, but it was a smash hit, but it turns out it was different either way. And even if we take a look at Disney's history of past animated films from the past 3 years, and because especially if Disney's past from 2020 to now, and especially in 2024, but even speaking with 2020 with Onward and Kanto, and then in 2022 they came out with Strange World, which people never liked, but even though I have not seen it, and it was a flop for Disney. But even in 2023, when they came out with Disney's Wish, that was supposed to celebrate 100 years of the Disney company and its brand, but sadly it did not perform with expectations, because it didn't hit with a lot of people, especially with those ideas when those combined. But even with 2024, that was a big year for Disney, because even with Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Moana 2, and now those three movies that are under the Disney umbrella, they have grossed over $1 billion, which I am really happy to see. That with Moana 2, that was a solid, decent film. That was a big box office hit, because even if you look, I think Disney live action remakes or something like that, especially with sequels but bad movies that were box office hits, especially because I look at the animated films. I'm talking about with Toy Story 4, the live action Lion King, and those were back in 2019. That was the big year for Disney as well, because those grossed over $1 billion. But speaking of which, with Moana 2, I mean, Disney animation really needed a win. And now, with the big question that I want to get off the top of my head and answer is, what did Disney do to make their comeback, especially with their new releases that were really a big hit, especially as they were made into events now with younger audiences and families to come out to. I think back to when Disney Plus launched, and that was huge during the pandemic because it gave younger audiences and families an idea is to skip the theaters and watch a brand new Pixar or the newest animated film from Disney on your big TV instead of going to the theaters. But even though as time went on, the Disney brand really made these releases skippable to watch on the big screen. But I mean, that was something back in the old days. But now, even if we look forward and ahead into the future, I think what Disney is doing, planning with their future, is making these movies an event that they have to see in theaters enough time period to be released on streaming. Because I think back to like I mentioned last year, in 2024 when Inside Out 2 was the big win, the comeback for Pixar, and that did over $1 billion. I think with Mufasa, The Lion King, which I never really liked, and that's winning big numbers at the box office because even though that's a follow-up prequel to the live-action Lion King, because I mean that's what Disney loves to do because in their money-hungry ways. And also Deadpool and Wolverine, highest grossing R-rated film, and especially for Disney. But especially with Disney animation, I think that they can cook up so many ideas. But if how can they make their movies appealing to everyone? And even if it's an original idea that people don't resonate with, but how they can make it good with characters that people can relate to. Because even if all of us that grew up with Disney animated movies, especially the Pixar ones, that really made us fall in love with these characters and to even make us cry towards the end. And that's something that I really enjoyed from the Disney brand, because so many movies just as well. But even with a movie like Moana 2, that's just something that was made a big theatrical event. It came out the holiday weekend with Thanksgiving, and that's the big sweet spot for families to come out and see the sequel to the first Moana, because Moana was the most streamed movie, the most viewed on Disney Plus, and that's why many generations of kids grew up to love Moana, especially with the songs and the Polynesian culture and from what that movie represents. And especially with the Moana 2, I think it's just gonna be one of those things where a movie can be solid or decent, even if the younger audiences and families love it, especially if it's not for everyone. But especially with Disney's future for what they need to succeed is, of course, with the sequels that are definitely going to win, even if they are not appealing, but also if they're good enough to make a big box office win. But especially with the original ideas that are coming from the Disney umbrella, is that it has to appeal to everyone. I mean, especially with younger kids and also to teenagers and also adults as well, because we show up to these movies, we support Disney, but even if Disney goes into a different direction, especially with backgrounds, what people are coming from, what they adapt into their stories, but even though with the things that people do not agree with, what Disney has been up to, especially behind the scenes and all that drama. But I think Disney does have a bright spot here, because especially with their departments, and I think they have a real shot at doing this. Just with the brand itself, I think it's in a better, safe and sound future. And even if they do switch things up a bit, but trust me, Disney has so many hits up their sleeve. But even if the ones that are good or bad or just a decent enough time that it doesn't remind us back of the oldies of Disney and animation, but it's still gonna be a big hit as well. These are my thoughts, and this is a prime example to which of Disney making their comeback, especially with Moana 2. That was a big box office hit, did over $1 billion, and even in 2024, that was the big year for Disney. and I think this could continue on later down the line. They approach something good, especially for the audiences as well, especially if you're a big fan of Disney and their stuff as well. But that's gonna do it for this video. Just let me know in the comments below, and what your thoughts on this, thoughts on Moana 2 doing over $1 billion. What do you think of Disney's comeback? Is it bright in the future? Just let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to know notifications about videos. Also follow all my social medias over the link down below. And with that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.